Hi, this is Svetlana from Cosplay, and today I have a really cool crafting making up for you. Today I'm going to show you how I built a really fancy sword, a shield and a scabbard for my current project, the Valkyrie from Raid. So Raid reached out to me and asked me if I want to bring one of their champions to life. And the best is actually they have like 600 amazing looking champions, so I could basically do whatever I want, and this is like the very best. I was super excited. So my choice was then finally the Valkyrie. She is a red hat. She has some really amazing looking sexy bikini armor, and you know I love it, and she has some really big props, and this is like the very best. So in this video I'm going to show you how I made like all her weapons, and in the next one you are going to see how I made the rest of the costume. And if you also want to build your very own props, check out my foam props book, which is full of tutorials and helpful tips and tricks on cosplay.com. And now let's start crafting. Here is the full Valkyrie costume reference again. I really love her design. You can also see all of her equipment, the shield, her scabbard, and what I'm going to start with first, her sword. So let's do this. As always, every weapon begins with a blueprint. To create one for me, my husband Benny traced a screenshot of the sword in Adobe Illustrator. He is pretty fast, so this didn't take long. Once done, I printed out his drawing and taped the individual pages together. As you can see, Zelda was not the biggest help here, but she's cute, so it's okay. After I cut out the shape, I could already see that the size was perfect. I really enjoyed this step of the process. Next, it was time to start crafting. I grabbed some 10mm super high density foam and began tracing the blade. 2 layers were enough to get the right thickness. Then I cut everything out with a simple box cutter and quite a bit of force. For additional stability, I cut out a groove in the middle, spread glue on both layers, placed a fiberglass rod, and then stuck it all together carefully. Looked pretty good so far. For the handle, I actually let some fiberglass stand out at the end, which I then covered with a larger PVC pipe. The rest was just filled with, you guessed it right, hot glue. There is nothing hot glue can't do. Anyway, now I had to sand the blade off the sword. Sadly, these wings would be in the way here, so they had to go. Chop chop! After marking the midline, I began to roughly cut away the bulk of the material. Then it was time for sanding. The belt sander was perfect for this job. To be honest with you, I never used this machine, but here it actually proved to be very useful. My result was a really smooth blade. Almost perfect, but sadly still too wobbly. So to help with stability, I decided to cover the whole thing in wobbler. Minda helped me to cut out 2 large pieces, which I then heated up by double wielding hot air guns. And finally, I covered my blade with it from both sides. This material gets super flexible and sticky when heated up, so I made sure to tightly connect the edges all around the blade. While it was still warm, I used strong scissors to cut away the excess material. Once the wobbler was cold again, it's sturdy enough to be sanded for an even smoother finish. So, now I finally had a solid and smooth blade to work with. Next, it was time to add the wingies to the grip again. And before you ask, I constantly worked with contact cement here. I also cut out an additional part, which I then glued to the center of the blade. Last but not least, I still had to give the grip some love. A simple 2mm foam wrap did a great job. This actually turned out super cool. My favorite part of the sword, however, were these Nordic runes that I first marked with a pen and then melted into the foam with a soldering iron. Please make sure to wear a good respirator when doing this. Now the result looked super awesome and I could attach the remaining details. I carved a little sphere out of several foam layers and attached it to the end of the grip. Then I sanded 3 little pyramids that got glued onto the blade and a couple of circles and other little details to finish the rest. This work step was actually done pretty quickly, but the result looked super cool. I was really happy with how everything turned out. Now everything was done and the sword was ready to be painted. Yay! To prime the surface, I applied 5 thick layers of flex bond. This helped to close the pores and smoothed everything to get a really shiny finish. Then it was Benny's turn again to help me out. He started by applying a black glossy airbrush primer to the whole sword. This was already the base color for the blade. Over this he brushed a thin layer of silver. Working with a regular brush instead of an airbrush actually gave the sword more texture. Next he masked off the silver and began airbrushing the rest of the sword with all-clad polished brass. If the surface underneath is glossy, this paint turns out really shiny. Just a few more details here and there and Benny could remove the tape again. Now some weathering was still missing. So he applied a thick layer of satin spray varnish and added brown oil paint into all the grooves and cavities. As you can see, this made a ton of difference. Now a final layer of clear coat and the sword was complete. In total, we worked around 1 week on it and I think it turned out great. Okay, so far so good. Now let's move on to the shield. Just like for the sword, Benny drew me a blueprint that I printed out. But as you can see in the game, the shield is not flat like a drawing, it's actually round. So Benny created the shape in 3D first and then printed me one slice of it, which I could then trace to 10mm EVA foam and cut out 8 times. It may look flat right now, but after gluing these slices together one after the other, it actually got the same roundness as the shield he made in 3D before. That's super cool, right? Here I noticed that 10mm was not enough to give the shield a lot of stability though. So I baked a second pizza and connected the two with a lot of glue. Much better. Next, I simply trimmed away the excess material all around and bam! Sturdy shield! Following that, I added a 2mm layer on top to hide some ugly seams. While I was working on the shield, Benny sent some parts of his blueprint over to a flux laser cutter. I could obviously cut out everything by hand, but this solution was so much faster. Just had to dremel the edges a bit rounder. Next, I marked the areas I needed to glue and placed the inner ring first. I then connected all parts of the outer ring and attached it carefully to the shield as well. The details were also easy enough to place. And here is Minna bothering Benny's brother Jacob, who helped us for large parts of this project. The face in the middle was probably the trickiest part of the shield. As you can see, it was one giant puzzle. I sanded the edges of every little piece and then connected it one after the other. Once everything was set together properly, I just had to place it onto the shield. A few final details and done! Looks cool, right? Team effort! Since the inner side of the in-game shield was actually modeled without a grip, I had to design one for myself. For this, we created a few wooden EVA foam planks, which I then glued onto the back. I marked where I wanted the grip to be and cut 2 simple handles out of round foam dowels. To make these hold properly, I cut a hole into the material and attached them with a lot of hot glue. With all of this, now they hold pretty well. Perfect, now on to the painting. I will keep this part a bit shorter since it's basically the same steps as for the sword. First, I primed everything with 5 layers of flex bond and then Benny used golden airbrush paint to cover everything he needed. Once done, he painted a few darker areas by hand since this was faster than masking everything off. The wooden planks at the back also got painted by hand using only a bit of brown color and then moving it quickly up and down. Then a layer of spray varnish and it was time for the oil paint weathering. Just a little bit of brown paint here and there. A few fine details with a smaller brush, a final coat of varnish later, and the painting was done. I think Benny did a fantastic job here, but I was not quite finished with the shield just yet. The corners had to get covered in leather as well, so I masked these parts off with some tape, drew on the shapes I needed, pulled it off, cut it out, and traced it to my favorite brown faux leather. I cut these little pieces out 4 times and then simply glued them onto the shield with contact cement. The matte leather mixed really great with the shiny golden rims, don't you think? For the back, I also repeated the same steps 2 more times. Masking, tracing, cutting and gluing. Really nice. The only detail missing was dark blue fur all around the edges. By the way, I will link all the materials I used down in the video description in case you're curious. I made a long sausage out of this super pretty dark fake fur and then, you guessed it right again, hot glued it all around. Glue, glue, glue all around the edge until I was done. A bit of hairspray to bring the fluffy fur into shape and a few extra golden nuggets that Benny made for me as the final details on top of the leather. And my shield was done as well. I'm really proud of this one. Plus, it was a true team effort. How do you like it? Now the last part for this video was the scabbard of the sword, which you can see here. We tried to figure out if it was actually designed to fit the sword, but it looks like it's just there for decoration. However, this makes building it a lot easier since I can just make it solid, so I'm okay with that. So again, we made a drawing, printed it out and checked that the dimensions looked correct. Then I cut out 3 layers out of 10mm high density foam and stuck them on top of each other. Since my sword didn't need to fit inside, I actually faked the top of the scabbard to only look like it was hollow. Next, I had to sand away the edges with my Dremel to make the shape look round, and then I added a few additional layers on top to complete the basic shape. So far, so good. Now I cut out parts of my blueprint to mark where I had to glue on some rivets, while our laser cutter was busy with some other details. The decoration on top of the scabbard actually had a lot of smaller pieces, which all had to be glued on, one after the other. The step took a while, but the end result looked really cool. We were almost done with it now. Just a few layers of flex bond, a red base color, some darker shadings, white a bit of masking tape, a black primer, golden airbrush paint and a few details painted by hand. Next, some clear coat, brown oil paint for the weathering, a final layer of varnish and it was done. The only thing missing here was the leather strip for the attachment, but that will come later. So the sword, the shield and the scabbard are now completed. I think they all turned out awesome and I can't wait to show you how we made the rest of my Valkyrie costume very soon. I really hope you liked this video, and like my favorite part is actually the sword. I think it turned out really amazing and Benny did a great paint job. What is your favorite? Also, let me know if you have any questions. Just write me a comment down below, and if you still want to support us with the YouTube algorithm but don't have any questions, just write down Corgi and join the Corgi squad. And as always, you will find all tools and materials in the video description as well. And yeah, with the rest of the costume, like I'm almost done. Like I'm so close and I cannot wait to show you the rest of the costume. But you know, almost done takes forever. So wish me the very best and you will see the rest then in the next video. Also, thanks so much to Raid for this really cool collaboration. I totally enjoyed and I'm super happy because we got like plenty of requests from them for doing actually typical YouTube integrations, but I'm super excited that we could do a full costume instead. This is so much more amazing and I'm really happy. And if you want to support the project as well, check out the game by using the link in the video description or in the pinned comment. The game is free to play and you'll get a special starter pack including 200k silver, 1 energy refill, 1 XP boost, 1 Asian shard and the epic champion Virtus. This bonus is available for the next 30 days and for new players only. You'll find all the bonuses in your inbox. Thanks again for watching this video. If you liked it, like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one, and we see us very soon in the next video with the finished costume.